Today, we become legends.
Hey, my name's Inter, and welcome back to the channel, and today we're doing a reaction, which I haven't done in a little while, but Elion recently put out a video essentially comparing Smite 1 and Smite 2, the pros and cons, what he thinks is better, what he thinks is worse. I haven't watched all of it, I've only watched the first couple of minutes, but I thought it looked interesting. You can see on screen already, he had like a little intro where he has basically all of his pros and cons listed, but he's going to go through them all as he goes through the video, and I'm essentially going to react and give my thoughts on it, because based on what I've seen, there's some things I agree with and some things I definitely don't. But yeah, basically it's another State of Smite video. We're going to react to it, so let's just jump right in. Yeah, by the way, check out Elion if you haven't checked him out already. He's on Twitch, he's on YouTube. You can check out all of his stuff. You can watch the full video if you want without my reactions. I probably won't include the entire video in this reaction. It's 38 minutes and I'll be adding time by reacting. So yeah, definitely go check him out. Give the video a like and all that stuff. Even if you just go to the video, give it a view, give it a like, do that.
Oh, 9.5. 2 items are actual spikes. 3 pacing of the game feels natural and active. 4 scaling is real with relic upgrades, infinite glyph option, 500 and 3k pot timer. Minion time to kill. Minions are actually killable. 7 double relics. 8 flat pen. I'll just say flat pen. Yeah, no, 4 is cap. In my opinion, you and us complain about 500 and 3k pop being boring and only like 5 glyphs. No, I agree. Is there more to grow on that? Is there more to grow on to grow on 500 pot, 3k pot? I think you just add more item slots, right? That's more fun than those. But I'd rather have a 500 pot on a timer and a 3k pot on a timer other than just people farming to just keep buying 3k pots to eventually do damage.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That I am a big hater of infinite stacking 3k pots. I know the devs have said they're a bit of a stopgap. They were to prevent games going 40-minute averages. But I really hope they do come up with a more elegant solution than these stacking 3k pots at some point relatively soon, because I think they do a lot of damage to the game. As Elion mentioned there, you know, it leads to a situation where people would rather farm than fight for the entire game. Whereas in Smite 1, you might rather want to farm than fight for like the first 20-25 minutes, but then once you've already hitting your 3k pots, you can't get any stronger than that, and that is actually good for the game, I think, because if there's always a way to get infinitely and permanently stronger like 3k pots, you're just incentivized to farm the entire game. Whereas in Smite 1, once you've hit your 3k pot, and as long as you're farming enough to keep your 3k pot up permanently, which is not too hard, then you actually look for fights, you look for objectives and stuff like that, and that's what 3k pots does. And also there's the other separate issue that's also related to 3k pots, and that like no one feels tanky in the late game once people start getting 3k pots online. Penetration is so high and everyone has so much strength and intelligence from all stacking 3k pots and stuff like that, it just ends up being like that it's pointless to be a tank after about 35-40 minutes, which not every game goes that long, but the games that do go that long feel absolute shit to play a tank in. I guess I'll go over a few of the other ones that he's put up here. Node 9.5 high base HP. He also has TTK here, which I'm a little confused about. Maybe he'll explain as he goes on, but he's saying Node 9.5, so like the lower base HP is better, but he's saying TTK is an issue. In my opinion, TTK is too fast in Smite 2, but it sounds like he's saying TTK is too slow in Smite 2, based on the fact that he wants lower base HP, you know, that will make time to kill faster. And I'm not sure I generally agree with that. I think in a lot of cases, the TTK in Smite 2 is probably too fast at the moment, especially in the late game. You know, 3k pots also tie into that. Items are actual spikes. I could take this or leave it. I think they're actual spikes in Smite 2 and in Smite 1. I don't think there's that much of a difference. Pacing of the game feels natural and active. Again, I don't think this is much of an issue that is like squarely in the Smite 1 category. You know, I think the pacing of Smite 2 does feel a little bit worse than Smite 1, but I don't think it's like that major of an issue. Scaling is real with relic upgrades, glyph options, 503k pot time. I agree with this generally. I think, you know, it is a lot more interesting when you have stuff that you can be buying that is actually like cool and not just I'm buying extra stats with 3k pots. Glyphs were really cool, relic upgrades were cool, branching starter upgrades were cool. A lot of this stuff is really good. It's just, you know, a matter of how much time do the devs have to actually get all of this stuff in when they're doing other things. Minions are actually killable. I don't really get either. I don't know if this is just an issue that I don't run into personally, but I don't really find an issue with minions being unkillable. I guess maybe it's coming from more of a support perspective. I know Elion is a support main, so, you know, I guess supports in the late game, you know, if you're a support against a wave that's stacked up or a fire wave or something, there's not a whole lot you can do about it. Double relics, personally, I prefer one relic, to be honest. I think it makes it more interesting with the actual decisions you have to make, and backliners having beads and Aegis all the time, it would be even worse in Smite 2. Flat pen, completely agree with. Flat pen should come back, in my opinion. I think it smoothed out the power curve. You know, this like pacing of the game kind of stuff. I feel like flat pen ties into that quite a lot. When mids and jungles don't have access to flat pen early on in their builds, it leads to, you know, a situation where you would just rather farm early game because, you know, your flat pen, it doesn't hit minions, so it's not like flat pen is going to help you farm in mid lane. It will help you kill jungle camps. Jungle camps do have protections. But flat pen isn't going to help you against minions. They have scaling mitigation. They don't have protections, and therefore, you know, going a flat pen rush, you want to fight if you're going a flat pen rush in mid, for example. Let's continue on, though.
Is better than what we have right now. Can you expand on this? Of course, you can always expand. There's always room for improvement. Nah, League's elixir system is shit. You just had more item slots. Skill ceiling, or anything like that. Skill ceiling is actual. Hybrid scaling is dog shit. All right, Smite 2 pros. Aspects +1, I guess. Active items. Is aspects really a pro though? Aspects, like, there is good aspects in the game, right? But I agree there is a lot of shit ones, but there is some good ones. If the thing about it is right now they're rushing to pump content, right? So aspects can be good. But why would you not add an extra slot? That literally, what is the negative to adding an extra slot? All right, guys, please explain to me what can you come up with as a negative for adding 2 more slots? You don't buy 3K pots? Awesome. That means you're truly counter building instead of building the same shit as the other 10 players. Okay, I think
I think he was talking about adding 2 item slots there. I think the issue there is similar to 3K pots. You know, in theory, we could have 15 item slots, but then, you know, everyone's just going to keep farming for their items over and over again like they're currently doing, trying to farm for 3K pots. At some point, the game has to end, and at some point, there has to be a limit on how much you can just go and farm so the team fights actually happen and the game ends and there's actual, you know, team fights. I think adding more item slots would just, you know, make that even more of a problem. We already added 1 item slot to Smite 2 because the starter item takes up its own slot. Now, I don't really think we need more, honestly.
I think this is all the pros for Smite 1. Any more pros that you guys think for Smite 2? Any more pros? New engine, but I guess not really comparing the game though, right? Like, wouldn't you just put Unreal Engine 5 and copy Smite 1? All right, Smite 1 cons. Old engine. I mean, but like, is this
okay, so apparently it's done with the Smite 2 pros. Yeah, aspects, it's insane that it's even debatable that aspects aren't a pro of the game, in my opinion. They literally just add more ways to play. Are some of them unbalanced? Yes, but I don't think that's an issue with the aspect system. That's an issue with them not being able to balance things appropriately. Yeah, if there's an unbalanced god release or there's an unbalanced item or something like that, you don't say items are a shit system because there's an unbalanced item. You don't say never add new gods because new gods are release OP. You don't say that. You shouldn't say that with the aspect system either. You know, there are some aspects that I think are poorly designed, but there are some gods that I think are poorly designed. Again, you know, it doesn't mean we shouldn't add gods to the game because there's some release and they're poorly designed. Aspects are just a big W. +1, I guess. +1s are just good, in my opinion. They're interesting. They started doing this towards the end of Smite 1, and I thought it was cool as well, you know, some of the older gods. Do I think every single god that comes over needs +1s? Probably not. But a lot of the gods now, like if I went back and played Smite 1, which I've done occasionally, I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, this doesn't work that way, dude. There's no, that was a +1 change for Smite 2. And I think they definitely make the gods a lot more fun and interesting. They freshen things up as well for some gods that have been out for like 10 years with no fundamental changes. Active items, yeah, obviously a big W again. You know, active items, they make support a lot more of an interesting role. They make solo more interesting. Even some other roles build active items as well. They raise the skill ceiling a bit. I think they're interesting for sure.
Right, like, I mean, just put Smite 1 on Unreal Engine 5. Looks better. So, all right, so that's a great question, right? I think that one is debatable. Does Smite 2 look better than Smite 1? It looks different. It looks different. Does it look better? That's opinion. I think that's to who you ask, right? I think Smite 1 looks better. I think Smite 2 just looks super saturated. I feel like it looks pretty similar, other than Smite 2 is just like really grainy and grainy and saturated. Well, it looks like you put an Instagram filter on Smite 1. I think Smite 2 looks like you put an Instagram filter on Smite 1. Yeah, I don't think the visuals for me don't matter either way. Like, they really don't. Like, Smite's gonna.
Yeah, I agree. The visuals don't matter all that much, but they do matter to a lot of other people. That's why I think visuals are important. And yeah, in terms of graphics, I do think it's debatable. I think in some areas, Smite 2 looks better. Like, the god models are just noticeably higher quality. If you look at a god model up close in Smite 2 compared to Smite 1, they are just noticeably higher quality, and that is the case for a lot of stuff. I think the quality, you know, the graphical fidelity is undebatably better in Smite 2, but I would agree that the style, especially in regards to the Conquest map currently, is definitely worse. And I also agree with Elion in the way that, like, I do think it's too saturated and grainy right now, you know, compared to Smite 1. So I think some areas Smite 2 looks better. I think some areas Smite 1 looks better.
No matter what it looks like. All right, Smite 2 cons. Smite 1 cons. Old engine. All right, what are more Smite 1 cons? No, Smite 1 damage is perfect. Smite 1 time to kill is perfect. You guys think it feels smoother than Smite 1? I think, all right, Smite 1 cons, I think there is some interactions and misfire on some abilities. Example, Naja auto chain, right? Could you guys agree with that? Like, I think there, but that would just fit. That would be fixed with with Unreal Engine 5, would it not? Like, exactly, Silver, exactly.
Yeah, but you can't just say that's not a benefit to Smite 2. You know, we're comparing the games as they are. We're not comparing Smite 2 versus if they remade Smite 1 on UE5. We're comparing Smite 2 to Smite 1. And also, just, he's mentioned this a couple of times, remaking Smite 1 in UE5 would come with a lot of similar issues, I think, because they would have to remake everything. It's not just like they could copy and paste Smite 1 into UE5 within a couple of months and just get it done. They've had to remake almost everything from the ground up. You know, they wouldn't have been able to just import everything. So any of these issues that occur with Smite 2 and the transition to UE5 probably would have fucked up a lot of stuff in Smite 1 as well if they just ported it over to UE5 directly. And also, that would be a hell of a lot of work for a game that was already dying. You know, Smite 1 wasn't dying just because of the engine. Smite 1 was dying because it was getting old. And I don't mean by the engine, I just mean, like, you know, people have been playing this game for so long and there hasn't been any significant changes, which I think stuff like aspects and active items and +1s, those are the kind of big changes we need. And yes, they could have added those to Smite 1, but then at what point are you just saying it's Smite 2? You know, if they ported Smite 1 over to UE5, but then added aspects and active items and +1s, it's basically Smite 2 at that point. I don't think just porting Smite 1 over to UE5 with the amount of work that would take, you know, because you would still have to port all the gods. You know, it's not like they would just be able to port the entire game over and all the gods are immediately right there. They would have still had to make the gods as they're doing in Smite 2. If they directly ported Smite 1 over to UE5 on the same schedule, there would have been a little bit less work because they're not adding new stuff like aspects and active items, but they would have still had to port all the gods into the game. We still might not even be done. You know, imagine people complaining that, like, oh, we just got the exact same game, but it looks a bit better, but my favorite god isn't here. You know, at least with Smite 2, there are new things to be excited about. I think the idea of just porting Smite 1 into UE5 is a complete non-starter, to be honest.
Every con that isn't Smite 1 just leads back to the engine, not the game itself. I don't think it was like buggy. Like Bees and Ages, it wasn't buggy. It's like when you're in the middle of casting something or doing something, you can't press beads. Like, I think in Smite 2, you can press beads like right away. Like it's gonna react right away. Like, I think there's like when you, let's say you press Sylvanas Pool, right? And you're trying to beads, you can't because you already casted Sylvanas Pool, right? But that's an easy fix. Like that's like because Smite 1 is so old. Like, if you were to copy Smite 1 as on Unreal Engine 5, that wouldn't happen anymore. Like, even though Smite 1 has some interactions and misfires on some abilities, for example, like Naja auto chain, I still think Smite 1 is more consistent than Smite 2 in almost all the other abilities. Mercury Grab. Like, there's a lot of abilities in Smite 2 that are just fucking cooked, bro. Oh, wait, we forgot. Smite 1 Pros, 10. Map is 10x better. All right, Smite 2.
Yeah, I don't know about 10x, but I agree.
I have so many. Literally shit map, too big, spread out farm, worth nothing. Not enough contested OBJs, which equals more skirmishes. Wait, 9.5. Too much base HP. All numbers, strength, intelligence, HP, scaling are all wrong. Minion
I don't know what that means, to be honest.
Too high. 2 pen options. Starters suck. Exactly, yo. Time to kill is too high. Anything else that I've talked about, guys?
Yeah,
no.
So he does think the TTK is too high. I just generally don't agree with that, man, at all. I think, if anything, the TTK in Smite 2 is too low, personally. I think maybe he's thinking about early game. Like, early game TTK can be quite high in Smite 2, I guess, and there's not too much early game kill potential, which does lead to a bit more of just, like, you'd rather farm than fight. But I think a lot of the reason why you'd rather farm than fight is, like, kills just don't matter in Smite 2. Shutdowns are so unbelievably strong. You know, you can kill someone 3 times in late, but you get shut down and then you're up 200 gold. And it's like, I soloed this guy 3 times, died once, and I'm up 200 gold. What is this? Like, I think that's a larger portion of why people would rather farm than fight. You know, there's no point really in killing people. But yeah, maybe like the TTK in the early game could be shifted a little bit to be a bit lower, but I think the TTK in the mid to late game is too low, if anything, in Smite 2.
Anti-heal, question mark. Minions are still there, although dead, question mark.
I agree on that, yeah.
Some people don't have frame problems. I think it's unfair to say no heroes, like no gods available, but like that's like unfair, right? Because what can they do, you know? Because either way, if they were let's say they magically decided that, damn, yo, Smite 1 does do all these things so much better than Smite 2. Let's just transfer the Smite 1 map, the Smite 1 items, the Smite 1 relics, the Smite 1 glyphs, and then let's build on top of that with our good proactive moves that we made in Smite 2, like aspects and active items, and then go from there. If they did that, the heroes, the gods options would still be a problem, right? Oh yeah,
that's what I was saying earlier. So, yeah, like they even if they ported Smite 1 directly into UE5, they would still have to port the gods in the same way they're doing right now, and we'd probably still want to have all the gods in the game. I think it is a fair criticism, though. That's actually where I disagree. I think it is a fair criticism that Smite 2 has less gods. You know, that is just objectively true right now. There's not much that can be done about it, obviously. You know, and I think overall, deciding to move to UE5 was a good idea, even though it means like we're going to be waiting a while for a lot of the gods to come into the game. I think the fresh code base and the new engine is it's what makes the game feel a lot smoother, like we were talking about earlier. You know, it's not just the engine, it's also the fact that it's a fresh code base, I think. I'm not a coder, I don't have any insight from like high-res devs on this or anything. But I imagine the fresh code base, you know, Smite 1 was originally a mod for a different high-res game called Global Agenda, and it's been running for 12 years, and they've been adding and removing stuff. Devs have talked about, you know, like gods inheriting traits from other gods, so you make a change on Bologna and it changes Gilgamesh too, like random shit like that. A lot of that stuff is gone in Smite 2 with the fresh code base, and that's why it feels much more smooth in a lot of those interactions like Elion was talking about earlier. I guess I'll go through a few of these other ones that I didn't talk about. 2 pen options, I think this generally is good. Pen is always a really hard thing to manage. I think there are upsides and downsides to the current pen system and the old pen system that we had in Smite 2 and had in Smite 1 as well, where pen is spread across multiple items. I think the downsides of having 2 pen options is that, yeah, you know, you've kind of just got to like rush your percent pen in like 4th item or whatever, otherwise you're kind of doing no damage. You can't get any pen otherwise. Although I do think adding flat pen back to the game would help with that. You know, a lot of the reason people are rushing these 35% pen items in like 4th or even 3rd slot sometimes is because there's no flat pen available. You know, people would just go flat pen early game and then get their percent pen a little bit later on. But then the downsides of putting pen across a load of different items is that like it kind of homogenizes builds a little bit. Like currently you just are forced to build Obsidian Shard or Titan's Bane, whereas if it was spread across multiple items, you might be forced to build Obsidian Shard and Spear of Desolation and Necronomicon and Doom Mob if they all have percent pen on them. Obviously you won't build all of those items in one build, but like you're basically forced to build more items because all of the items with percent pen on them are kind of going to be must builds. So yeah, I think there's upsides and downsides to both ways of approaching pen, to be honest, but I think I'm generally okay with how pen is handled at the moment. Starters suck. He didn't really elaborate much on this, but I assume he means like there's no branching upgrades and there's only 3 options. Yeah, that is just another thing where like that will probably get added over time. You know, Smite 1 had 10 years to develop a lot of this stuff. Smite 2 has been out for like basically a year. I think over time we will get more and better starter options and we will get branching starters back. It's a valid point, but yeah, that will just get better over time. No anti-heal, again, I think there's upsides and downsides to this. I am generally leaning on the side of no anti-heal being a good thing for the game, but I can absolutely see the other side of it. You know, sometimes things can get out of control when there aren't any counter options available in builds. I think they need to add more soft healing counter items, so like if an enemy is healing a shit ton, you can get a load of benefit from that. That would be good. You know, currently there's only 2 soft anti-heal options in the game, and neither of them are for damage dealers. If they added some of those, I think it would be better. And they can maybe add more anti-heal into God's kits, or more soft healing counters into God's kits as well. You know, if someone heals around you, you get a benefit on a certain ability. I think it can work, basically. I think the state it's in right now isn't ideal, but I think it can work. Minions are still there, although dead. Yeah, it's just a bug that's in the game currently. Smite 2 is generally more buggy than Smite 1, I would agree on that. Frame problems, I can't really comment on. I have a NASA PC. I never have frame problems with Smite 2, even while streaming. But I have heard a lot of people complaining about this. You know, it's the upgrade to UE5, it's the higher quality textures and stuff like that. The game is harder to run. Let's continue on, though.
Do you guys see where I'm coming from with that? Like, I think it's kind of unfair to say no gods. Like, you can never go back to Smite 1. That is not an option, right? But just making Smite 2 really similar to Smite 1's map, meta, and items would make their life so much easier. They're trying to balance these fucking items like Sanguine Leash that have 2 paragraphs to read of an item. They're trying to balance this item And there's like, bro, fuck that item. Fuck that item. Just add all your Smite 1 items. They're all been balanced over 10 years. They're good. They're well thought out. Stop with all these fucking items that have 3 paragraphs but don't do anything actually. Like, fuck those items. Oh yeah, I forgot. I guess my 2 pros, Hecate, Mordred, Aladdin. All right, what else?
Yeah, I agree, dude. The new gods are really sick, I think. But I would have Barry in there as well. Barry has some annoyances. She's my least favorite Smite 2 edition, but she's still pretty cool, I think. And then on the item rant, I somewhat agree and I somewhat disagree. Like, there are pros to the Smite 1 items in the way that they have been balanced over time for a long time, but also, like, you know, it gets a bit boring. People want to change. There was a reason Smite 1 was slowly bleeding player count. You know, it's not really ideal to just keep doing the same thing over and over again while your player count was bleeding. You know, you gotta shake things up, and I think a lot of the new Smite 2 items are interesting.
What else? Smite 2 cons? Anything else that you guys think of? Oh yeah, Smite 2. 1 relic. All relics are ass. No upgrades. Friends list. Mic issues. Sunder 50 flip every OBJ. No pro league. No chat. Can't type anything. Exactly, Bulu. Exactly, Bulu. Game just feels clunky. Anything else that is actually core? I literally can't think of more Smite 1.
Yeah, we'll go over these then. The 1 relic, all relics are ass. I don't really know what he means by all relics are ass. Like, they function exactly the same way. No upgrades is fair, though. I do think the relic upgrades are really good. But again, you know, it's like branching starter upgrades and stuff like that. It's just the fact that they've moved to a new engine. And, you know, something that Elion was arguing for, like, just porting Smite 1 directly into UE5, you would still have these issues. This is not a Smite 2 issue. This is the fact that it's a new game issue. And Smite 1 ported into UE5 will be a new game. In the same sense that, like, you would have to port all of this stuff over. It won't all just immediately be there. They can't just copy paste everything. It's a new engine. There's a lot of different things. If they could just copy paste everything, they would have done for Smite 2, I think. Friends list, yeah, friends list needs some work for sure. Mic issues, I don't really use mic. I don't really know. Sunder 50-50 objective split, I agree. Sunder 50-50 is really annoying, to be honest. I think they should probably just rework or remove Sunder, replace it with something else. No Pro League, yeah, absolutely sucks. I think the Pro League is very important to the game. It really sucks that we don't have one right now. I think maybe they should put a little bit more effort than they are into trying to establish some kind of Pro League. Obviously, it requires a lot of funding that they don't really have right now. But even just something small, some kind of small official league rather than running stuff like Smite Prime. Weekend made a video about this somewhat recently, I think, and I genuinely agree that, like, instead of running a monthly 7k Smite Prime, just save all of that money up and run a 100k, like, World Championship at the end of the year or something like that. No chat. There is chat. It's just, it's very less functional than Smite 1 chat. I'll agree on that. Game just feels clunky. I don't really agree with this generally. I think Smite 1 feels more clunky in most interactions, to be honest. There are a lot of bugs. As I said earlier, there's more bugs in Smite 2 for sure. You know, stuff like Mercury 3 and whatnot. That's obviously very clunky. But I think on the whole, Smite 2 is less clunky than Smite 1 in the way it plays.
Cons. Oh yeah. No match history or items. But, like, I feel like matchmaking isn't fair because they have no players, and that's not going to change. I mean, maybe unless they say Smite 1. Exactly.
There is match history. I don't know what he means by no match history or items. I guess you can't see your build in match history. Maybe that's what he means. That's a fair criticism.
Really, I do think about that. Yeah, but both games have bugs. It's just about rank inflation. That doesn't matter. That's just that's like a problem on the amount of players that they have. Like, let's think about core problems to the game. Actually, the game. When you put Smite 1 to Smite 2 side to side, what are the biggest differences? I'm still trying to think. What do you guys think about this? Is there anything else you guys would add? Or do you guys feel like this is full? Yeah, Smite 2 should have tournaments. Like, do you guys know that Dota 2 has a tournament? Has tournaments every Saturday in client that you sign up for in client that will pull your rank and make a bracket for you, and you can play with your friends.
Yeah, that's dope. That would be really cool. They were talking about this when Max was still with the company. Max, Innocent Rabbit, he was sort of like the lead matchmaking and ranked kind of dev on the team. Unfortunately, he left to join another studio. He wanted a more local job where he didn't have to work from home, I think was the general reason for that. And he was working on this kind of stuff, so hopefully that can get picked up at some point, because I do think in-game, like Conquest Cups and tournaments where you just sign up in-game would be really, really good for the high end of the game. It would give people something to strive for, you know, whereas I guess Smite Prime Prime exists, but like something similar to Smite Prime, but on a lesser stakes in game, where you just sign up in game, would be really good.
It feels soulless to play, but like, that's hard to like really break down. You know, soulless.
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean exactly? Like, for some,
I hate when people make this argument. Like, people just say, "Oh, the game feels soulless. Oh, the game doesn't feel right," and it's like, explain yourself. You know, I guess you don't have to explain yourself, but like, if you're trying to make a serious argument against the game, and that's not a serious argument in my opinion, just saying it feels soulless. Like that's not a serious argument in my opinion. Whereas a lot of the arguments he's brought up here are serious critiques. Some of them I don't agree with, but like I don't want to even bother interacting with someone that just says the game feels soulless and that's why I don't play it. Like I don't even know what that means.
let's say for devil's advocate, right? Someone that loves Smite 2 to the death. I have yet to hear someone say that, but let's say the devil's advocate. Someone is like, yo, I fucking love Smite 2. Thank God they changed Smite 1, right? Like, I love Smite 2, right? Never.
Honestly, that's kind of me. Not really. I do think there's absolutely some issues with the game, but I do think it's better than Smite 1, if that's what he means.
Never heard that before. Just want to say that. But for that guy, what would he say about this? We need to talk about it objectively. We can't talk about it with. I know you guys are passionate and I respect that. Side TP for Smite 2, Connor Pro. You see, I feel like that falls under the map. The map is dog shit. Did I put that in Smite 2? Oh yeah, shit map. Yeah, pretty.
That's probably the single biggest thing, honestly, in my opinion. The map is dog shit. Like, that is the single biggest thing that I agree with, and a new map would do absolute wonders. They're trying to, you know, improve it and stuff like that, like the addition of Moonlight Phase and some tweaks and whatnot, Firebrands. But yeah, ultimately, the map is dog shit. That is one of the things that, like, Smite 1 absolutely does better, and that's, like, the main thing, to be honest.
What's really better about Smite 1 map outside of Little Less Farm? It is the flow of the map. Dragging camps, guys. Holy fuck. Anything else, guys?
Agreed on Dragon Camps. I think they removed it because, you know, they wanted casual players to have a better experience. That was pretty much the only reason they removed that. Casual players didn't know how to do it, but, like, even then, I feel like if you don't know how to pull camps, you're going to lose to people that do know how to pull camps, and your MMR is going to go down, and so you're going to get put against people that don't know how to pull camps, and then it's fine. Like, in theory, the matchmaking should solve that issue. I don't know, though. I am generally in favor of Unleash camps. I think it was a good idea. I think we should bring it back.
No, it's not, Kai. All right, Kai, look, Smite 2 is legit the better built game. What are we talking about here? Okay, we found someone. We found someone that loves Smite 2. All right, explain to me Smite 2's pros. We only have 4 of them. Can you give me more pros than active items, Hecate, Mortar, Aladdin, +1, I guess, and aspects?
Well, already, these are some absolutely massive pros. You know, they are small sentences, and he's wrote a lot more stuff down here, but these are all way less impactful than stuff like aspects, active items, +1s, and the brand new gods. These are all in themselves, other than the map. Every single other Smite 2 con he's put down here is infinitely smaller than these ones. So, like, these are massive Smite 2 pros. These are all a lot of small Smite 2 cons, other than the map. So already, I think, like, the gravity of what he's put here is similar to the gravity of what he's put here, to be honest. But then also, split scaling is another one, you know, different playstyles for gods, more role diversity and things like that. You know, Kali has 3 different playstyles. She can be an ADC with the aspect, she can be an inability-based build, or she can be standard Kali. And split scaling is a large reason for that. I think split scaling is super interesting. That's not been put here. Overall, I think the game feels smoother. He puts that in the cons section, that the game feels clunky or whatever. Personally, I feel like it plays smoother than Smite 1 in most interactions. The game boots up and runs generally a lot better. I know people have, like, frame rate issues and stuff like that, but, like, the fact that I can boot up Smite 2 and I can enter jungle practice and move between menus within a fraction of a second, whereas in Smite 2, you know, you click on something and then you get the spinning fireflies for about 5 seconds before it shows up. The game takes like a minute and a half to boot up every single time. To load into a match takes like 2-3 minutes. You just sat there staying in the loading screen. Like, it's just generally a lot more optimized, other than maybe the frame rate. And I think it probably is more optimized on the frame rate in-game side of things. It's just, you know, there's so much more going on with the higher resolution textures. It's still harder to run. But yeah, I think in general, the game is just a lot smoother, especially out of game. It's a lot smoother. Monetization wise, I think it's better as well. I think Smite 2's monetization is better than Smite 1, especially better than like earlier Smite 1, where like chests were everywhere and you could only get skins from chests. It's not a super fair comparison because later in Smite 1 they did make it so that basically everything is direct purchase if you want to pay a higher price for it. But even then, I think Smite 2's monetization is better. You know, the Wandering Market I think is an amazing addition that Smite 1 doesn't have, with the coins incentivizing people to play, the new Wandering Path giving out a bunch of free stuff incentivizing people to play and grind, you know, get their daily chests and stuff like that. Smite 1 doesn't really have, it has similar things, but it doesn't have something as comprehensive as the Wandering Market and Wandering Path. Prisms, I think, are really cool. You know, there's something you don't have to buy, but you can buy if you want to have like different ways to play your skin. It allows them to make money at a pretty fair way, in my opinion. Like, just in general, I think the monetization of Smite 2 and like what is available there is just better than Smite 1 as well. That's another thing that I'll put there, which is another big thing. Again, you know, the monetization of the game being more fair is already much bigger than almost everything he's put into Smite 2 cons except the map. I think that's like the main issue here. Like, he's putting such massive things as Smite 2 pros and then kind of disregarding them as like, oh, that's one thing that's better about Smite 2, and then he's putting like 15 different things down here that are all very minor issues in my opinion. You know, aspects alone would cancel out like 5 of these smaller issues. But yeah, that's some other things I would put in there for Smite 2 pros. But also I think like all of these are just absolutely massive compared to what is put down here, other than the map. The map is the only thing I'll say that is a massive issue that is better in Smite 1. Anyway though, bad time to pause. Apologies early on. Let's
team fight.
There we go, it's a little bit better. I think I'll leave it there. This is only like 10 minutes through a 40-minute video, so if you do want to watch the rest of it, I think he's probably talked about most of what he's going to talk about in this first 10 minutes. That's kind of why I stopped there, and I've given my thoughts and stuff like that, but there is probably more that he talks about, so if you want to hear more of Elion's thoughts, definitely go check out his YouTube, give him a like, give him a subscribe if you enjoy the content, and you can watch the rest of that on your own without my commentary. But I just thought I would give like a little bit of a reaction to this, because I think some things I agree with here, and some things I really don't agree with. And I think if like someone just posted a screenshot to Twitter or whatever, you know, it looks like, oh, 20 things are worse in Smite 2 and only 4 things are better. But again, I do think like aspects, active items, +1s, the new gods, monetization being better, split scaling, these are all massive things. Whereas small things like a friends list, mic issues, chat being weird, no match history items or whatever, these are all tiny things. You know, it looks like there's a massive amount of stuff here, but a lot of them are all small things. But yeah, obviously let me know your own thoughts down below, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you know.